So moving on, now we'll look at the topic electronic configuration. What is electronic configuration? From electronic you can derive electron, and configuration means means arrangement. So electron arrangement. So what does it actually mean? It means that it is electronic configuration is the arrangement of electrons into the shells of an atom. I told you that the shape of an atom looks like this, that it has a nucleus and then it has shells surrounding the nucleus, and in nucleus the atom in nucleus of the atom there are electrons and protons present in it, and in the shells of an atom electrons are revolving around the nucleus in the shells. So what is a shell? It is the right definition of an atom. That shell is the pathway followed by the electron. You can see electrons revolving around the nucleus in these shells. So shell is actually a pathway followed by the electrons while revolving around nucleus. You can see that electrons are revolving around the nucleus in shells present around the nucleus. So now what is valence shell? Valence shell is actually, now if you look at this atom, it has a nucleus and then a shell, then a shell, and then a shell. The third shell, you can see that it's the most outer shell of this atom. But now always not there will not always be three shells in an atom. There can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and more onwards. So if an atom has one nucleus and only one shell, so it's this shell will be known as valence shell, the outermost shell. What is a valence shell? Valence shell is the last or the outermost shell of an atom. So here in this case, valence shell of this atom is this one, the first one, and here in this case the valence shell of this atom is this one, third one. Now likewise, if I give you like this, you see that the second shell in this case is the valence shell. It is known as the valence shell. And now what are valence electrons? Valence electrons are those electrons which are present in these shells. Like if I say that there are 4 electrons in this second or the valence shell of this atom, you say that there are 4 valence electrons present in this atom. Likewise, if I give you 1, then you say that there are 2 valence electrons, 1 valence electron, and now 2 valence electrons. Here 1 valence electron, 2 valence electron, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 valence electrons, 8 valence electrons. So these are the valence electrons which are present in the valence shells of the atom. Only those electrons which are present in the valence shell of the atom will be known as valence electrons. No more electrons present inside in any other shell will be known as valence electrons. Now before going to draw the structure of atoms of given elements, we have to have a look at this. So here you see that it is the nucleus of the atom, and then you see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 shells surrounding this nucleus. So you say that this fourth shell is the valence shell or the valence shell and the last or outermost shell of this atom, and the electrons present in this fourth shell or the valence shell will be known as the valence electrons. So now remember that always in an atom, in the first shell, whether it is the valence shell, whether it is the valence shell of the atom, or whether it is not the valence shell of the atom, always remember that there will be 2 electrons present in this first shell. Always 2, not more than 2. Yes, there can be less than 2, like 1 electron, but not more than 2. There can't be more than 2, never ever. So remember that in the first shell of the atom there will be always 2 electrons present in the shell, and then in the second shell, whether it is the valence or not the valence or the non-valence shell, remember that there can not be more than 8 electrons present. However, there can be 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 to 7 1 6 7 and 8 1 to 8. They can be from 1 to 8 electrons, but not more than 8 electrons. If there are more than them, then you have to shift them to third shell, in which there can also be only 8 electrons, present, not more than 8 electrons. And same for the fourth shell, where can be 8 electrons present, not more than that. Um Mostly in your exam, the questions the questions which you get are mostly when you get to draw the structure of an atom. You mostly get to draw the structure of such an element, this structure of an atom of such an element, which mostly has 4 shells. So here the fourth shell, fourth shell can contain the remaining electrons, because here the fourth shell is the valence shell, so it can contain 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, but not more than 8. If more than 8, then you have to draw another, which is the fifth shell, and then shift more than 8 electrons into them. Remember, only in the first shell there will be always 2 electrons, or more than or less than 2 electrons, but for the rest of the shells, whether they are the 100th or the 1000th, or the 5th, 6th, you don't have to increase the amount more than 8 electrons in that shell. Same for this, like in first shell, if an atom contains 3 shells, in first shell 2 electrons, second shell not more than 8, third shell the remaining and not more than 8 electrons. Like here, first shell 2 electrons, second shell remaining and not more than 8 electrons. In this case, it only has one shell, and which is the first and the valence shell, first and the last shell, first and the valence shell. So first and the last shell. So what you have to do, I told you that in first shell you can only contain 2 electrons, not more than 2 electrons. So there can be only 1 or 2 electron, not more than that. If there are more than 2 electrons, then you have to draw another shell.